so thank you so much for being here and inviting me along. It's really great. Sue and I have had some terrific conversations around what the group is about. I did actually present a similar talk to Manchester Genius Youth Social last October, and I just love these groups because you're all on the same path as me. And when you find like-minded people, it's fantastic. So I'm really hoping I can add to your thinking, add to what you might be able to take away and start to implement in your life as well. So tonight I'll tell you a little bit initially about my own story and how I developed conscious leadership as a business, essentially. And then I'm going to run through some slides to actually talk through what my program is, if you like, or my approach to conscious leadership is. And out of that, hopefully you'll get some tools to be able to take away as well. And then in the Q&A, obviously, please feel free to ask me whatever you like. And then right at the end, I'll make an offer to you in terms of how I can help as well. Sound all right? Mm-hmm. Yes. So, first thing, stand up, please. So, one thumb up and one finger out. One finger, one thumb, one finger, and switch. And switch. And switch. And switch. Right, hand on nose. Cross over the arm to the ear, and then switch. Oh, pretty good. And switch. And switch. And switch. Okay, so try thumb finger again. One thumb up, one finger out, and switch. And switch. Any better?
Yeah.
A little bit better, yeah? And switch, and switch, and switch, and switch. Okay, sit down, have a seat. So, yeah, the boys would love it. What were we doing? What was it about?
Training your brain in some way.
Okay, definitely. Changing patterns, training the brain in some way. So the switching is actually getting, when we work with our right hand, we're actually affecting the left side of the brain. That's the part that's engaged. When we work with our left hand, we engage the right side of the brain. So if you want to do anything really creative, doodle with your left hand, unless you are a left-hander, then use the opposite. And that will start to switch on the right side of your brain. So when we do that, we learn 100 times faster. When we actually get them both going together, we learn 1,000 times faster. And I'm sure there's not a scientific number that I've just used, but essentially the thing is that when we learn skills that actually start to integrate both our logical side of the brain and our creative side of the brain, and more spatial visioning side, then we will start to become more conscious. We'll bring both powers online, because actually the left side of the brain is not that smart. It's the right side of the brain it is. But unfortunately in education, we've been taught that it's the logic, the rationale, the tick the list, that is the thing that's more important than being able to envision. The problem is that when we get into leadership at very senior levels, they know the job, they know the left side of the brain really well. What they're not so good at is the emotional intelligence, the ability to strategize, the ability to really envision the future and make a real difference and know where to go with the company. So there's a big shift in the way you're expected to think when you hit those more senior levels. And as business owners, we have to be able to do both all the time. So this is the start of finding some ways into how you develop yourself and how you get your brain to do what you really want it to do as well. So for me, it's just a way of waking you up a little bit. You saw how quickly you could shift. You actually did get better in bringing the right side of the brain online. And hopefully you'll be more open to hearing what I have to say, and your own intuition will start to kick in as well. Useful?
Yes.
Yeah. Teach your kids anything that crosses over, you know, doing the Macarena. Yeah. anything that crosses over, and that's why crawling is very important with children as well. So then you start to integrate both sides of the brain, because it actually has a crossover point, and you need to get the wiring going, the information flowing through that crossover. So, just by way of an introduction, take a moment and think about who here has ever had a moment when you have felt this incredible loneliness and a real longing for something that you feel like you can't quite see or can't quite touch. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So this is your soul longing for you to reconnect with consciousness, with coming back into your own truth at a very deep level, and it creates an incredible longing, and it can feel very lonely because in fact we have actually separated ourselves from our true source and our consciousness, and that's why we feel so lost or even bereft at times. So who else has experienced a moment of doubt and wondered, am I on the right path? And okay. And there's so much more of me that I could be giving if only I knew how. So again, this is your soul's calling to say, use your talents, develop your talents, offer more to the world, and do what you are here to do, what you agreed to do for this planet. So, my own story. So one day I was driving home from work and I came to an intersection, pulled up at the red lights, and I was just looking around. It's quite close to home, it's familiar territory, and I noticed on one side of the intersection there was an Anglican church, Church of England. On the other there was a Rosicrucian church, and on the other there was a Uniting church, and on the fourth corner there was a home. And I was sitting looking around and thinking, wow, 3 different religions. And I thought, what I really need is a belief, but it's not going to be a religion. And at the time, I was feeling that really deep longing and that loneliness. There was a feeling of this veil that was covering. It was like I could see a veil and I could not see past it and I couldn't reach past it. But I knew there was something on the other side. And I really was very, very unhappy because it would not leave me alone. It was like I was being pulled to it all the time. And in my search, because it wouldn't leave me alone, I actually found the philosophy of yoga, and so I found a spiritual path for myself, and I started to follow the practices that came along with all the wisdom and the teachings of that yoga. And as I did that and started to really give myself to those teachings and read and study as well as get up and meditate in the mornings, I discovered that that veil started to dissipate, and quite quickly. And all of a sudden, my own intuition was getting really, really sharp. And I've always been highly intuitive, and it's actually in the story in the book of Voices of Hope, I talk about that. And I have a family who are all very switched on in that way. So it's not unusual. But what I found was that quite rapidly, my own intuition was getting very, very sharp. My insights about people, my ability to vision was becoming really, really strong, and I was making better decisions faster. And a lot of energy started to release itself, and my life picked up. The other side of it was that I noticed that anything that didn't serve me anymore was leaving really quickly. People were leaving, situations were leaving, anything that was basically negative did not hang about. And so within a few months, I'd actually decided I was going to divorce my husband and leave a very, very unhappy marriage and take on the job of being a single mum to my 2 daughters, who were at that time aged 5 and 7. So at that time I thought, all right, if I'm going to do this and do this well, I don't see why we shouldn't have a great life just because this marriage is not working. We all deserve to be happy. Then I need to be able to provide them with the kind of life that I want for all of us. And the only way I could see myself doing that was to meditate. So I took myself off to a retreat, as we all do. And when I came back, I bought a house for me and my girls, and then I lost my job. And it was the crash of the IT industry, and suddenly there I am being made redundant along with 90 people in one day, with a mortgage to pay and 2 little ones to bring up. So as fate would have it, at that point, I fell into fundraising. Never done it before, kind of knew what it was. However, someone put me up for the job and miraculously I got it. And I still work in that industry. Now it's, 19 years or something or more. What I discovered in working through fundraising was that there were all these amazing people who, some very, very wealthy, who wanted to give their money to greater causes. And I started to see the power of what money could do in making a very big shift when we all brought our money together, and when we brought our energy together as volunteers of our time, or running events, or whatever we wanted to do. And that my job was to actually allow all of that to happen and help people be part of something greater. The great blessing for me was I started to view money differently, but also I saw how much joy and fulfillment it brought those people who were involved in that way. So I started to see that my role was not only to get money for a non-profit organisation, it actually was to provide an opportunity for those people to do something really special, feel great themselves, no matter what they had to be doing in terms of responsibility in their own lives as well. And out of that, I also got to see businesses. So then I started to see that some were actually succeeding in spite of themselves. And I'd be watching what was going on in the dynamics inside the organisation, and I started to think, oh my goodness, if they could just get themselves together and be more conscious of what they're doing, imagine what they'd be capable of achieving. So it was in that moment that I actually decided I wanted to help make the workplace a better place to be. And I wasn't quite sure how I would go about that. But I had been running personal development programs and working inside a yoga centre part-time and running workshops, healing circles, more spiritual type work where people could obviously go deeper within themselves and start cleaning up anything that was holding them back. And I thought, how can I bring that into the workplace and make it not so ooh-ooh, but make it more acceptable, if you like, because I knew by then what all of those practices were doing for me with the challenges I faced, but also I was seeing, gosh, there's so much that can be done with the right conduits for the world generally, where governments won't put up the funding and won't provide the resources and services. And also, what if these businesses could be so much more powerful, so much more abundant, so much more successful? Imagine where we'd be going. So in that time, the thing that showed up for me was executive coaching as the label I'd been looking for. I just went along to an afternoon or an evening to find out what it was all about, and came away saying, oh my goodness, this is it, this is what I need to do. So I trained in executive coaching and very quickly realised that that wasn't going to necessarily make me a lot of money easily, and what was really needed was leadership development. And very, very quickly, my first client was National Australia Bank at business banking level, and they brought me in. I started doing workshops, then they were asking me to create coaching trainings, and over 5 to 6 years as a consultant, I was actually ending up working with the top heads of decision support inside that company, 12 main heads under the CEO, and working with them and their teams. So we were talking earlier about, do you work from the bottom up or do you work from the top down to create a cultural shift? I found it was best to work from the top down, because it was those people who actually got it and said, where have you been? Whereas if I work too far down, into the layers, I realised that there was a level where people would start to say, who is this woman? Where did you find her? So they weren't conscious enough to actually really benefit from where we wanted to go and how we wanted to do things. So today, I still bring all of those principles and experience into my work and into the way that I coach and the way that I do business development, corporate learning and development and things like that. And it's never let me down, so I want to bring people on the journey as well. So what is conscious leadership? Let's have a look. Do you want to move the slide? So before we move on, because you've been listening to me for a while, I'd like you to just put both feet on the floor, sit comfortably for a moment. Trust me, you'll be all right. Just give you a little bit of an experience of how to shift your energy again. So just close your eyes and take a deep breath in and a long breath out. Another deep breath in and a long breath out. And then just breathe naturally. And as you do, I want to imagine yourself expanding and lifting, and it's as if you were getting finer and higher in your energy. There's a sense of a lifting up and a lifting out. You're actually raising your vibration when you do this. You're raising your energy frequency when you do this. And just use the breath to do it. You will know intuitively what to do. Just take a moment to feel that expansion and that lifting. Just notice any sensations, anything that's happening anywhere in the body, anything that you're noticing. Allow the body to be soft. And then take another deep breath in and a long breath out. Another deep breath in and a long breath out. And then you can open your eyes. Just feel the room. This is how you create a cultural shift. This is how you change energy, by changing your own. So for me, there's two tasks. One is to allow ourselves to be drawn in to what it is that we need to do to really connect with our source, really connect with who we are at our absolute, undeniable self. And the other one is how do we then bring that out into the world and do what we can while we're here to make as big a difference as possible. So if any of you have read The Alchemist, Paul Coelho says the closer one gets to realizing his destiny, the more that destiny becomes his true reason for being. The closer one gets to realizing his destiny, the more that destiny becomes his true reason for being. So, you might know spiral dynamics. Anybody come across spiral dynamics at all? Okay, worth looking at. And I'm trying to remember who put it together. It's Ken Wilber. I hope I'm right about that. And what they talk about there in spiral dynamics is that we're actually moving up a spiral in our awareness and our consciousness, and the whole of society is moving with it. And eventually we hit a second tier where we're actually much more heart-centered, but we've gone into almost like another octave of our awareness and how we're going to serve the world. And what they're saying is that the new tier 2 company leads with head and heart, has a higher level of self-sense, wants to ensure the survival of the whole human species and the planet, has healthy hierarchies, aims to remove toxicity and ensure development through all stages of life, continually pursues more conscious awareness, and believes in and builds abundance for all. You're welcome to have these slides on. I'm happy to have them sent out because this would be really lovely for you to map your own business around. and see where that sits for you next. For me, in developing consciousness, it's a matter of following our physical intelligence. What do we need physically? What do we need in our physical environment? What do we actually need as human beings, human bodies? Then we move into emotional intelligence. How do we handle our emotions? What do we need to do so that we are emotionally far more productive, more collaborative, create better relationships? Then mentally, with our IQ, our intellectual quotient, what do we need to study? What do we need to learn? What do we need to fill our minds with that will actually help raise our consciousness? And then ultimately, what about our spiritual intelligence? And spiritual intelligence is about what do we value, what are our ethics, what is our mission, our purpose, where are we really going, what do we want to contribute? How do we know that we are on path? How do we know we're on track and we are feeling happy and fulfilled ourselves through that? We have to work with all four. And in my work, I look very closely at this. And the first one is what's happening with your energy. How can we shift the energy? And values are our true north. So anything, I really believe values are our heart speaking. So when you're trying to work out what do I really want to do, start looking at what you value most. Okay, so quickly, David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, is an amazing book. And he talks about how to lift energy according to our emotions, but also the language we use around those emotions. Anything on this side is dragging power, it's forcing energy to shift, and you'll probably see a lot of politicians using this. And on the other side, you have all of the very positive, uplifting emotions and the energy that starts to generate power. So instead of sucking energy out of the system by trying to force things to happen and force people to do things, what we're doing is helping people actually create power and use their own power, access it. And this is where we want to be. So if ever you wanted a good reason for being all of that and really positive, that's it. Thanks, Sue. For me, there's 3 levels of conscious leadership. And I think what we hear about a lot is the global one, all of the great goals, and they're brilliant. And I've known about them since there were 8 goals to start with many years ago. But what we really need to do is start with self-leadership. Then we look at how do we lead others and how do we help them lead themselves. And then we can look at what's happening on a global scale. How are we actually taking that out into the world? A lot of companies get here and they look fabulous, but they're not doing much here. And they're totally out of integrity and they wonder why people aren't engaged at work, etc. If you want a sense of flow and it all making sense, my work very much is start with self. My 8 elements. So here are the 8 elements that make up most of the practices that I've built into my life. I've been doing them for 30 years now. And this is what I teach and mentor on in my mentoring and coaching programs as well with individuals is, firstly, what's your intention? If we don't set an intention, we don't know where we're going, and we can't direct the energy towards getting to the goal if we don't really know why and what we're doing, where we want to go. Our energy, mindfulness, contemplation. Contemplation is a very deep way of thinking, getting to the truth, letting the heart speak. Journaling, reflecting, giving yourself time to reflect, write it down, let it all come out, start to get your insights, move on from there. Visualization, meditation, and attunement. Attunement is a bit of what we did in raising our vibration. And when you do get very, very good at tuning, you will start to hear things, see things, you'll realize you're getting guidance working through you and become very familiar with that. Something I love because I'm a spiritual healer as well. So for me, attunement is really everything to me. Thanks. The 5 realities, just quickly. We all think we live in this reality and there's maybe another reality that we're trying to get into. But if we actually look at the way that we live, for me, there are 5 realities. The first one, quickly, is remembrance. It's really the first 3 chakras. we're just trying to balance the physical, the emotional and the mental all the time. We're just remembering who we are, remembering what we need. It's just a bringing together of ourselves. When we go into radiance, it goes to the heart, and then we're saying, what am I radiating? What sort of light, what sort of energy am I giving out? What's coming back at me from others through the heart? When we move into resonance, then we're really looking at the throat chakra and the third eye, as in what are we resonating with, and what are we picking up? How are we speaking about things? Are we doing the negative side of things? Are we doing the positive side of things? It's also where our creativity comes from. So are you resonating with a source that's wanting to work with through you creatively? And then finally, we have resolution, which is resolved to be of service, resolved to be a conduit for something greater. And then ritual involves everything. That's where the practices come in, the 8 elements, the things we need to do on a daily basis to make sure that we have all this together. So there's a whole book on this that's coming out, so don't try to grasp it now. In fact, I didn't mention it at Manchester, but it's worth thinking about. Thanks. Really do. So what good is it when we pull it all together? What's the good you want to do? What are we going to be doing? And each one of us is a very solitary individual with our own purpose, with our own connection, with our own inner desire to know who we truly are and live a great life. What is it that you're going to do? And then collaboratively, what can we do together? So when David says society needs visionaries of means, not dreamers of ends. Once we have the means, the ends will reveal themselves. So the greater part of conscious leadership, of course, is creating those means, and how will we bring those together to do something really great. So do I have time to tell my story about Epidaurus?
Yeah, we can.
Can I take 5 minutes because we're nearly done?
Q&A, yeah.
Yeah, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to finish off, my story of Epidaurus, and this is where I learned about putting love into action, and ultimately that's what we're here to do. The only lesson is love, and how will we put that into action? So I went on a tour of Greece, and the very first site that we came to, beautiful 10 o'clock in the morning on a late summer's day, was this amazing amphitheatre in Epidaurus. And this is a place where 40,000 people would come and listen to, watch plays, and this is the theatre down here, the stage down here. This has been built in such a way that there are 3 sweet spots where up here, and I was up here, I took this photo, I could hear a match being struck down there. And they have tried to reproduce the acoustics of this place in other modern buildings, and they can't do it. They don't know how they did it. It's really remarkable. But I was talking to my tour guide just before we left, and I went down and I was really overwhelmed by being there. And I said to me, oh, the pharmacy is just around the corner. In fact, it was around here somewhere. And I said, the pharmacy? And something kind of went off in my head. And he said, yes, but we don't have time to go and see it. And I said, you mean you've brought me all this way and I can't go to the pharmacy? And he said, no, we don't have any time. And as he said that, it was like this portal just opened up in my vision, and I was right in, and I could see a landscape, and I could feel what it was like to be there. And an incredible power was running through me as I had that experience. And I realized in that moment that the power that I had then is the power that I have now. And I need to accept that's a power I carry with me, and I have something to do with that. So for me, this experience was about accepting that there's a phenomenal power that runs through all of us, and we can do something really brilliant with it, very useful with it, if we accept that it's there and learn how to tap into it. So putting our love into action, wisdom and compassion, love and forgiveness, and grace and effort are the things to bring to our business to ensure that we do that. So you asked me to provide 3 learnings for me that from my work in preparing the talk. And I know one of them is definitely self first. I need to work on me first. Let me get them, because I want to make sure that I remembered what they are. So yeah, starting with myself every day, continuing to do those practices. Self-leadership comes first. Following my desires to save the world, really listening to what my customers want and what they need, and taking them on the journey with me. And the third one is, we are all masters of our destiny, so we have to have a strong vision and stay really committed to that. So they're the 3. It was lovely to think about those, because really they are the 3 things that are most, I think, drive me, as well as the 2 tasks of going within and then bringing it out. So I'm here. You have an opportunity to talk to me. The books are available too. The Gorgeous All Over is £15, and the